Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're thrilled that you are joining us today for this webinar. My name is Maria Vargas, and I'm the director of the Better Buildings Initiative at the U.S. Department of Energy. And I, along with a couple colleagues today, are thrilled that you're joining us to talk about a low carbon pilot. I'm just going to pause for 1 minute. I know we have a couple other attendees joining, so if we can just wait 1 minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. But I wanted to welcome everyone, and we're glad you're here with us today for an hour. Okay, it's 2:03, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, my name is Maria Vargas at the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, the U.S. Department of Energy. I oversee the Better Buildings Initiative, and we're excited to have so many of you joining us today for what we're hoping is going to be an interactive webinar to talk a little bit about something we're piloting under the Better Buildings and Better Plants flag here at the Department of Energy. If we can go to the next slide. Those of you who have joined Better Buildings and Better Plants webinars before know we try and make them as interactive as possible. The way we're going to be handling, because we have quite a number of folks on today's call, rather than the chat function or anything like that, the way we're going to try and address questions and answer the questions that people have is through Slido. So I'll just give folks just a minute to grab their phones. If you will either grab your phone or go ahead and open a new window on your computer. It's very easy. It's slido.com, and it will ask you to enter an event code, and it's, not surprisingly, DOE, Department of Energy. So just if you'll hit DOE, that would be great. We have a couple slides to run through sort of what it is we are thinking at the Department of Energy, and then have built in lots of time at the end of the webinar to take questions and answers. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump to the next slide, which really lays out sort of the couple key things we want to talk to you about today. We want to talk a little bit about why we are embarking on a no carbon pilot within the Better Buildings family at the Department of Energy, give you a sense of the spirit of what we're trying to do, the real opportunity, and an overview of how the pilot works. Ultimately, this pilot is about pathways to low and no carbon and why those are so important. Couple next steps, and then as I mentioned, we'll take questions and answers at the end because we really want to hear from you any questions that you might have. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So my guess is everyone on the webinar today already knows this, but I just want to remind people why the Department of Energy has a Better Buildings Initiative and what it really serves to do. And that is, the Better Buildings Initiative, which includes Better Buildings, Better Plants, a couple other activities, key pillars addressed and really designed to address key market barriers, is about defining leadership. So it is a voluntary initiative, as everyone knows, and we really work with the market and market leaders to understand the needs and barriers to drive greater energy efficiency, to develop replicable solutions, and have our partners who are really leading the way share those with the market so we as a country move faster forward together. We have about 1,000 partners in the Better Buildings Initiative broadly. Again, that includes not only the challenge, which is sort of the leadership circle, but things like the Better Plants program, Better Buildings accelerators, and other activities that we have. And, as Better Buildings has grown and evolved and learned and engaged with partners, we have also continued to move past just energy efficiency. And in the past couple of years, as many of you know, and I'm guessing many on the phone are working with us on other activities that we do that link efforts when it comes to energy efficiency to things like water reduction, waste reduction, supply chain initiatives, et cetera. So in this platform where we're really looking to address some very critical opportunities in the market that have to do with greenhouse gas emissions, but also dollar savings and the creation of jobs, we've been using Better Buildings to really profile leadership and what's possible by market leaders in the hope that others follow. So if we can go to the next slide, many of our partners have been talking to us about what's next. What is it? And many of our partners, I'm guessing, again, many of you on the phone today have been working with us on driving portfolio-wide energy efficiency measures across your plants and across your facilities. So if we step back and think about what's next, I think we all know and recognize, but sometimes the numbers really are amazing to stop and just look at. Buildings and manufacturing plants represent about 2/3 of US total CO2 emissions and a significant opportunity for reduction. There's tremendous opportunity there, again, to not only reduce emissions, but save a lot of money and create jobs. So if we can go to the next slide. So we've talked to many partners and we know that the ambition is there, and organizations like you have already begun to think about, and if not put into place, enterprise-wide carbon goals. They're either carbon goals, greenhouse gas goals, renewable energy goals. In fact, we know that about 70 to 80% of the organizations working with us have these kinds of goals, these enterprise-wide goals, and for a whole bunch of reasons, as you all know, and you will know the reasons that having those goals is important to your organization. I think, though, as we started talking to partners over the past couple of years, what we've come to realize is many times there are enterprise-wide goals, but if you dig down to try and figure out how organizations are going to make that happen, some goals are 2030, some are 2050, there isn't always the answer. So if I've heard once, I've heard a bunch of times, yeah, we've set a goal, but I really don't know how it is we're going to get there. And there's a whole bunch of reasons that I'm sure many of you can identify with where the actual pathway to achieve those goals is in some cases still largely unknown. And you can see all sorts of reasons that we have been told by partners and know from our work in the marketplace why there may not always be a pathway to find yet forward. So technology solutions aren't there. Current planning doesn't allow for some of the bigger step back thinking and think about fuel switching or grid alignment. Different pathways are needed for different facilities and different plants. So there's a whole host of reasons this isn't happening. So if we can go next slide, please. So given all of that, so given the opportunity that exists to reduce emissions and save money, and given the fact that many of our partners are beginning down this road, we are have launched a low carbon pilot. We're really interested in working with partners, people who want to work with us. This is voluntary. This is something you do because you want to. But the goal of this carbon pilot is really, it's the last bullet I put on the slide, which is to try and quantify, measure, and share where aspiration meets the real world. What do we mean by that? What we're asking organizations to do is to take one or two buildings or plants, because this is happening in the commercial building marketplace as well as the manufacturing sector. We're here today to talk about specifically what this means for the manufacturing sector, but this is really something we're doing broadly across the Better Buildings and Better Plants Challenge. So we're asking partners to work with us to take one or two buildings, one or two plants, and work with us in 2 years to figure out in the real world what you've been able to do at those facilities, or what you are doing, or what you plan to do to take those buildings to a low or no carbon. We are interested in working with partners to demonstrate what's possible, but also where you're getting stuck. So this is a really important point. I think that there are, because if you think back about the last slide we showed, there's lots of reasons this isn't happening, and there are lots of opportunities for us to learn from you about what works, what's possible, but also where we're hitting brick walls, where there are needs, where you're getting stuck, with the hope that through this pilot, we not only identify those, but some of that learning gets fed back into some of the not only research that the Department of Energy does, but in some of the efforts that we undertake in the Better Buildings Initiative. So we're really trying to understand where the desire to be low or no carbon, carbon neutral, really meets real world constraints and or opportunities. And our goal, just like everything we do in Better Buildings, is to convene leaders to share best practices and talk about this. We're anxious to learn from you. We're anxious to help you. And so with that, let's go to the next slide. Oh, yes. Okay, so I was going to do another slide, but let's do this one. So my guess is one of the questions that you will ask myself or Eli or Tom Wenning, who you'll talk to in a minute, that you all probably know because they're very close to you and overseeing the Better Plants Initiative at DOE. One of the questions is, what do you mean by a low or no carbon building, or a low or no carbon manufacturing facility, or a low or no carbon campus or facility? We have put together a framework to think about that. Part of the goal of this pilot is to not impose our strategy on you. We're very curious to see what opportunities you decide to invest in and what things make sense for you. So unlike Better Buildings, one of the things we've done in Better Buildings and Better Plants since it started in 2011 is to really identify where organizations are the same, right? So there's a lot when it comes to energy efficiency that can be shared regardless of sector. So a lot of the work we've done so far has really been to highlight where we're similar, where a hospital can learn from a manufacturing plant. But in the case of low and no carbon buildings, my guess is there are going to be lots of different pathways. So I believe that there's not one pathway that's right. And so really the goal is to think through, though, as the Department of Energy, we wanted to lay out basically the framework for how it is we're thinking that buildings, campuses, plants, facilities can get to a low or no carbon future. So if you'll look at this, again, this is the framework for the discussion, and it's a framework of how we're thinking about it. And there's just a couple things I want to draw your attention to. The very first step and the very foundational step for anything that will ultimately be successful when it comes to a lower no carbon outcome is starting with energy efficiency, right? So it's really, and that's where many of you have been leading the way for not only your sector, but your community and truly across the country. So it's really starting with energy efficiency, because energy efficiency is another way of saying getting rid of the waste in your system. Now, the 40 to 60% as being, as you see over to the right, as being a definition for what very ultra efficient means, that number really comes out of the work we've done more on the commercial building side. But the point of sharing that statistic, is just so you know how we're talking about this low carbon pilot across the Better Buildings family, but it's really to drive the point that we really believe, because energy efficiency is so foundational, we really want people to be as aggressive as they can be when it comes to energy efficiency, because then the rest flows from there. So then once you've eliminated all the waste, the energy waste in your system, it's really thinking through, are on-site renewables possible, and or any sort of energy storage or distributed generation. Then we're asking our partners to think through grid interactivity. Are there other ways to meet your energy needs if on-site isn't possible? And there are a lot of cases where on-site is not possible. So are there off-site renewable opportunities? And then as the very last step, are there things like offsets or RECs that could be used to close the gap between all the work you've done to reduce your carbon emissions and what it takes to get your facility to very low or no carbon? So it's really that framework that we're talking about when we're talking about what it takes to make a building or a plant low or no carbon. Next slide, please. So the pilot that we're offering, and we welcome anyone who wants to participate, is really working with us over the next couple of years to really demonstrate, again, where aspiration meets the real world, demonstrate the pathways that you are taking where you're being successful and where you're getting stuck. So we're really wanting to work with organizations willing to work with us, be transparent, like a lot of what we do in Better Buildings. These are solutions and stories and opportunities that get shared so other people can learn. As we always say, if everyone has to learn by themselves, we're never going to get where we need to get as a country. And so really the form that we're trying to offer, not only in this pilot, but across the Better Buildings, is to learn from each other to move faster forward together. So next step, next slide. So just real quickly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eli Levine, who oversees the Better Plants part of the Better Buildings Initiative. I just thought I would walk you through really what the ask is. So you know how we're thinking about the pathway to low and no carbon, and you know why it is we're doing it. So the question is, what are we trying to do in this pilot, and what would you have to do concretely? We're asking organizations, as we mentioned, to be transparent. We're asking to take 1 or 2 buildings in the next 2 years and really help us understand where you've been, what you've done, what you're working towards, and the path forward. We're hoping that you actually do much of this work as possible to actually take the plant to a low carbon status, if you will, a low carbon facility. So, and then share that with us and share us again. I keep saying this, but I think repetition in this case is good because we really do want to know what's working, but also where you're getting stuck. And our opportunity and our side of the partnership is really bringing to bear the best we have at DOE and the national labs to help you with technical guidance, to talk a little bit about establishing baselines and setting goals, to help you collect the information and the data that you have, and then really to recognize partners for the success that you're having and for the opportunity that you have to share what's working, what doesn't, and with the hopes that we end up in a very different place with a very different sense of some very promising pathways forward at the end of the pilot. Let me just stop by saying before I turn it over to Eli, our guess is by working with the Better Plants partners already, many of you already done this energy efficiency work. So you don't have to pick a facility where you haven't done any work. The goal would be to build upon that. You probably have the data, we know you have the data, that suggests that you've really squeezed the waste out. And so we're looking for this to be easy and as part of your ongoing business work and your upgrade strategies. So it's not to say you have to take a building that you haven't done any work in. It's really to learn from what you've already done and then how to move that and take that facility as an example of somewhere where you can really drive a significant push to low carbon. Eli, does that make sense for me to turn this over to you now to talk a little bit about sort of partner benefits and then a couple other insights that I know you and Tom have about the manufacturing sector?
Sure, Maria, and just nod to confirm you can hear me. Excellent. So I guess with that, I'll turn to the next slide, which really echoes a lot of what Maria was saying there. You know, why we think we're so excited about this, and you know, why we think that we hope that you'll be excited to partner with us on this. You know, really echoes a lot of what hopefully you found value in being part of the Better Plants and overall Better Buildings Initiative structure of really leveraging the technical assistance and guidance that we offer through our great staff down at the national labs for optimizing your carbon reduction pathways. Wherever we can facilitate this peer-to-peer learning where you're talking to each other and learning from each other, but also to echo what Maria was saying by demonstrating, by reading success stories and solutions and case studies, the more that it can spark new ideas or new ways of doing things that you may be able to replicate at your facility. We really want to facilitate that as much as possible. Thirdly, and most of you know this by virtue of being in the program, that there's tremendous value in demonstrating your active leadership by being shown and showcased as a leader, and allowing the Department of Energy to amplify your leadership as you work towards your pathways. We really want to celebrate you for pushing forward in this regard and showcasing what's possible. And then lastly, and this really is most important out of all, is that there really are concrete, tangible benefits for driving or towards low carbon goals and improving your energy performance. You reduce energy costs, you strengthen your resiliency. For our sector, it's all about manufacturing competitiveness, and hopefully it can help you drive progress towards your organization-wide sustainability goals as well. So this was something while, as Maria mentioned, there's in starting this, we want you to focus on your 1 to 2 plants, but wherever we can be helpful towards your overall setting and achieving your overall carbon goals, we want to help you towards those pathways as well. Not mentioned on here, but should go without saying, one of the things that we like working with you all so much on these different initiatives and through Better Plants is the ability for partners to inform us and to help us direct us towards where our technical assistance should grow, what new resources we can develop, what new tools may be helpful for you. So certainly by participating in this pilot, as we started off as a pilot on the ground floor, there's really a chance to shape how DOE can be partnering with industry on these great challenges we face. Next slide. So if you attended the Association of Energy Engineers AWE World Conference several months ago, you may have heard Tom Wenning present this. It was a wonderful presentation on the Solution Center, but this was one slide on there really looking at our sector and what the pathway may be. Obviously, start with pursuing, energy intensity reductions, looking at renewable energy procurement, thinking about electrification, fuel switching, looking, down, as you move down, thinking about, transforming your process upgrades. There are some challenges to that, and we'll want to work with you on that. And there may be cases where we can incorporate a lot of the R&D and innovation work that our colleagues are doing that may make sense for your facilities. Carbon capture is certainly something to explore, down the road, or where it makes sense for your facilities, and then carbon offsets as a final step as well. So any and all of these steps are areas that we're thinking about a lot. The national labs are thinking about a lot, and we want to work with you as you think about all of these different opportunities and pathways. Next slide. So hopefully by virtue of being on this call and as being a Better Plants partner, you're familiar with a lot of the resources we offer. Some of these shouldn't be new to you, and I know many of you have taken great advantage of some of these resources. But while the carbon reduction space is a new one that we're piloting here, a lot of the resources that I put this slide in because a lot of the resources that DOE offers are not new and are available, and we want to help you leverage them. So it may be that the Alternative Fuels Data Center or the REOP tool that the National Renewable Energy Lab developed may not be something that you've worked with in the past. Certainly work with your technical account manager, work with me, work with Maria, so that we can help you take advantage of all of these tools. But it's been great to watch the diagnostic equipment program expand in its use, and watch all, as Tom continually updates me on all these new features that they're adding to all of our online tools, like Measure as well. So all of this is a longer conversation that you can have with me and your TAM about these resources, but I thought it would be helpful to put this bullets up there to let you know that you're not starting from scratch, and DOE wants to help you. Next slide. So this, I will queue up my Slido app, and this is where you should, or slido.com, this is where you can be asking questions. We deliberately tried to keep our slides to a minimum so that we could spend most of the time answering your questions and talking about this pilot, and what you want from the pilot, what you would need to participate in the pilot. I will say that we are competitive as a sector, and I am competitive versus our building side colleagues. I'm looking for a strong industrial participation. I was very encouraged by the number of people who signed up for this webinar. You're getting my hopes up that we're going to have a lot of manufacturers participating. But from that, ask any questions here today. If you don't want to ask questions here today, I'm always happy to answer emails, to hop on the phone with you. You can ask questions before committing, to understand this better. I understand for many of your corporate structures that this isn't so easy as just saying, yes, I'm in. But I certainly hope that it is. Next step, join the pilot. Email Maria, email us. We'll if you say you're interested, we'll get the news to Maria, and then we'll have a call where we'll bring out Tom Wenning and our experts from the labs to get you started and better understand where your company is starting at those specific plants. And then we'll take it from there. And we have our online upcoming summit in May. Hopefully that's on the radar for most of you. It's a free conference. It's a virtual conference. There you go. The agenda should be coming out awfully soon, but sign up for that, and we'll be looking to convene people both at that summit and ahead of that summit and afterwards. So next slide. I don't know if
It's
there we
really
go.
the Q&A.
So
Yeah.
Maria, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Eli. Perfect. So I just want to sort of hone in on something Eli said. So you'll see on the last slide, there is my email address. So we will give you the email address. You have Eli's. So just let us know if you're interested. And then as Eli was mentioning, the first thing we will do is very quickly, within a week or so, jump on a call with you and your team. We've done a couple of these already on the building side, and it's been very illuminating in terms of giving us a sense of really what the barriers that folks are facing are and how we are going to organize ourselves to respond to that. So just to let you know, we're moving fairly quickly on this. So if you join, we'll set up a call very quickly with you and your team to very quickly dive in fairly, specifically on what you're doing, what your plans are, what you like, where you see the problems, so that would be just to set your expectations. We're moving fairly quickly, and then, because Eli is absolutely right, the goal is to convene our initial partners at the summit. Gosh, I wish it were in person, but virtually, and to have this leadership core really begin to inform moving ahead, as well as making sure we know how we can best help you as you go through your facilities. Okay, so with that,
we've got 11 questions, Maria. I don't, or 11 comments and questions. So I'm happy to go in any particular order you want. And I know they see the two of our faces, but Tom Wenning and Bruce Long are here as well. And if there's anything that stumps us, we've got someone else on the line who can probably help these as well.
Awesome.
So, Maria, I guess the first one I'll fire at you, and we can go back and forth on this.
Sure.
US-based sites, I am guessing.
Yes, I think we've been talking about this a little as a group. Our goal is for US facilities, and here's why. As a reminder, what it is we're trying to do in the Better Buildings Initiative, that includes Better Plants, is work with leaders who are willing to share their replicable solutions, right? So, and that's many times the decisions we make, or some of the factors that become key, are local incentives, local policy, local laws, sort of things that may drive local, what's available, right, in terms of natural gas versus electricity versus renewable energy. So we're trying to have it be primarily US sites because that really does feed into our desire to have solutions that are replicable for people around the country, around the US. I'll just take the second one really easily. So who do we contact about being a pilot partner? That'd be me. If you'll do that, we're just trying to centralize everybody. This is such a big initiative across BBI. My email again will be, it's not unlike Eli's in the sense that it's at ee.doe.gov. It's just my first name, last name, and at ee.doe.gov. You'll see that on the slide in a minute, in the closing slide. So that is, and then of course we just take that, log it, and then Eli and Tom will be reaching out to you for next steps. So that's the answer to that question.
Maria, the next question that I saw that I think is a good one for us to discuss is our goals extend beyond 2 years. I'm sure plenty of people are feeling this, and I'm unsure how much we will accomplish in the next 2 years in our manufacturing organization where significant capital is involved. How do you see that working? And at least from my perspective, and Maria, you'll probably answer this more eloquently, a lot of this is really designed at showcasing what's possible, but also doing the planning and analysis to identify your pathways moving forward. So just as we don't expect when you joined that you were starting your energy journey the first day you joined the Better Plants program, there was going to be things that you were doing beforehand that we wanted, we're happy to have you showcase and tell your story for what you've done already. A lot of what you've done moving forward, can be, this is our thinking about where it's going. This is the one project that we have for this coming year. But as we plot our, towards our long-term goals, here are the different steps that we anticipate taking. Do you think that's right, Maria? Is there anything you'd want to add?
Yeah. So I think let's just go back to sort of I think it's always good to go back to the spirit of what we're trying to do here. So like I said, 70–80% of you have enterprise-wide carbon goals. This is not a pilot to say you have to do all that in 2 years. What we're quite anxious to work with is organizations who have 1 or 2 facilities where they're on the path or are very close to being on the path to make real-world decisions and avail themselves of real-world opportunities now so that we can start getting real-world pathways. So Eli is right. I understand Capitol Police, I understand capital budgets and the time lag, but if you'll help us as pilot partners be mindful of, we're trying to be able to demonstrate as much, for lack of a better word, real world movement, real world success, real world getting stuckiness. I know that's not English, but that's really what we're trying to capture in the program. So we understand about capital budgets, but that's why the ask is 1 or 2 plans. Pick 1 or 2 and help us work on those. We're hoping, we've heard from other partners that is potentially a value to them as they look to demonstrate what's possible to their C-suite, or as they look to showcase opportunities to meet their enterprise-wide goals as an organization. So Eli's right, but my ask, being sort of impatient in terms of trying to meet the opportunity we have here, is to get as much real-world decision-making and traction and sharing of concrete things that have been done in the next 2 years as possible, because that's really what we're trying to pilot here, is to understand what we can get done in 2 years, what decisions people are making, which ones they're not, and which ones are working. So if you decide to join the pilot, and we hope you do, probably the biggest decision, or one of the biggest decisions you make, is which 1 or 2 facilities you choose to have be part of the pilot, because that's where we'll want to move very quickly with you on understanding what you've done, what you want to do, and then figuring out the stuff that you may end up not being able to get to, but your plans for that. I hope that was more eloquent and not more confusing, Eli. So.
No, that was good. And 2 questions that were related to each other was, 1, do you have a template that partners can use to share this information? And then secondly is, what type of information would DOE require partners to share? Who will this information be shared with?
Okay, these are good questions. So this is part of why we're doing this pilot. We are looking, so go back to an interest in understanding energy use before, and we're looking for a before and an after. And there are going to be lots of different metrics to capture that. We know how to capture it on energy efficiency, but that's where we're looking to work with all of you on the kinds of decisions you're making with the before and after. The sharing, as always, with anything in Better Buildings or Better Plants, is up to you. But remember, going back to I think the first slide we showed, the opportunity in Better Buildings and Better Plants is to share your success. So we're hoping that, and we never share things with the public that you haven't seen and approved. So this is not, that's sort of bedrock when it comes to Better Buildings and Better Plants. That's very much part of our DNA and how we work with our partners. But the goal would be to have you share what you've done and what the results have been, good and bad, so that we can all learn from what's working and what's not. And we will work for you. Some of this stuff you can track in Portfolio Manager, some you can't. So we will be working on a template with you. As when we jump on the first call with you, we'll show you the mock-ups of the kind of, for lack of a better word, we're sort of calling them implementation models, but the template for the story for the success and the work you've done at each facility. We'll share with you the kinds of data we're interested in, and then what that would look like conceptually right now. But that's part of the pilot, is to help us figure that out.
Yeah, that's great. I think if you've worked with us on sharing your story, if you've perused the Solution Center for other case studies, that should be a good model for us, trying to help you tell your story in a way that every partner gets to review before they go out, to make sure that they're comfortable with. There was another question, Maria. Is DOE encouraging pilot partners? My screen is jumping as I read this. Is DOE encouraging pilot partners to also plan for EV charging or for fleet alternative fuel vehicles?
Great question. I'm so glad. I'm so good. It's so good that people ask these smart questions. What I didn't mention is that at this point, the pilot is not concerned with a couple things. One is embedded carbon. Listen, that is something we need to grapple with, but we're not going to try and do that unless you want to, but we're not trying to capture that in this pilot. Likewise, EV charging, we've decided the only vehicles that we really want to and really think we need to include, of course, if you want to do it, that's fine, are transportation that's used in the buildings. So like forklifts and things like that are going to be part of the transportation that we would include EV charging fleet, alternative fleet vehicles. I don't think we're going to include as part of this pilot, but this is where I'd ask Tom, Wenning, Eli, or you to sort of weigh in if that's something that I've got wrong. But I do know that we have had a number of conversations about that. And there are a couple, I mean, listen, we could do a lot under this pilot. We're trying to keep it relatively simple and focused on site, really, for this pilot. So I don't know if Eli or Tom, you guys want to weigh in on that?
Sure, I'll give Tom a second in case he wants to pop on and turn his screen on too. I think you're completely right from our perspective. From our perspective, we want to work with you, and if you're already setting goals and are thinking about your fleet as part of your goals, we're happy to work with you as that being a part of it. But if you'd rather focus on excluding that and just focusing on your facilities, then we'd be comfortable with that as well.
Tom, you're on mute.
Purely echo everything that Maria and Eli have already mentioned. Certainly the forklift and that population of on-site transportation is super important. For looking through the partner list, I know some of you have massive fleets, right? You have massive trucking fleets to just move some of your product around between plants even, and so largely what Eli has mentioned, it's very optional, but for our short-term pilot here, and then long-term, obviously for many of you, that is going to be an instrumental part of your long-term decarbonization electrification plan, if you have long-term goals set.
Great, thank you.
Tom, since you're here, I'll ask the next one that we see on the screen here that's gotten 4 thumbs up. So it's the top priority to answer. Would the pilot include, future, everything moves. Would the pilot include future methods, post 2035 for drastically reduced fuel reductions, thinking about electrification, thinking about fuel switching, that are needed for folks who've set science-based target goals? Al chimed in that their view is, RE100 by 2035 works great to meet science-based targets, but the challenge is scope 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I think Eli presented the list today. It was like item 4, this transformational process changes, and it's all that fuel-fired either processes or support equipment at your site. Like, that's the elephant in the room for many of us. Like, how are we going to figure out how to address that? And Al, it looks like you got it right. It's electrification, there's fuel switching, there are a couple other mindsets out there of, fundamentally that may need some science, right? And so I know we've already, me and a couple of TAMs have already chatted with some partners about, well, what about heat pumps? Can you start addressing your HVAC system loads or other low temperature process heating loads with, heat pumps, or what other things that may be. But yeah, Al, this is something that we're interested in taking a look at for sure.
I like Alex's question from Lineage Logistics, or I like Alex's question that we have 100 plants all across the U.S. Where he has no say where the capital is allocated. If he identifies 1 to 2 now, but as they're participating from Tyson's Food, sorry, Alex, but if they have 1 to 2 plants down now, but if they start seeing a real standout plant, is there the ability, over the course of the pilot to, to either add that plant or to switch to that plant? I personally don't see any reason why that would be problematic, since what we're trying to do here is collect success stories and replicable strategies. But if anyone, Maria, if you have any thoughts on that, I'll give you a chance to have the final say.
Yeah, so I think, I always go back to the spirit of what we're trying to do and the goal here. So I think, look, we want to do what makes sense for your organization and helps you build the case internally for a pathway to meet sort of these larger goals. So I think that's fine. I think you could switch as long as you had the data and the pathway for the building you want to switch to, right? We wouldn't want to, it's a short-term pilot, right? Year or 2. But I think the other thing, Alex, you identified, which is worth talking about, really is why I think this pilot's so important, because of the need to deploy capital, right? That is going to be one of the challenges. And in some of the calls we've had already with people who have joined, that's become a very big issue, right? Do you have access to the people who are deploying capital? How important is that as part of this pilot? So that's just one thing we ask you to think about, because this will need capital investment, and it is something that you're going to want your C-suite to know you're doing. So the short answer to your question is, look, we'll work with you. If we still think at the end of the pilot, we're going to get a nice, robust case study, if we have pivoted facilities, that's really the goal, right? That's really the question. So if we can do that, then we're all in. But I think you raised a bigger issue, which is working with your organization. And I mean, that's part of why we're doing this webinar, so that you can talk to people and parts of your organization internally to sort of make sure that you have the capital budget, or that everyone knows we're doing this, so that you can align that internally. So the short answer is yes, but it teed up a larger sort of organizational challenge that we see across all the partners. This isn't just in the manufacturing space, it's in the commercial building space too.
So the next question that that got 4 thumbs up, I'll want to answer to. I do want to share, breaking press. We've already had someone email you, Maria, indicating that they're in as a result of the pilot. So hats off to Kingspan for doing that. That is great to see. But the question here: what are the reporting requirements and timeframes? CO2 can be tricky to do monthly if you have things like propane and diesel consumption. When we think about reporting, I think it's important to clarify about the types of case studies and solutions that we want from this versus what they may be familiar with from Better Buildings and Better Plans in terms of actual data reporting. So I tend to think that what we're looking for here is case studies based on data, showcasing successful strategies, and not per se this was our amount of diesel use in the month of May. Let's or even on a yearly basis. It's much more about showcasing successful strategies and replicable case studies. Would you want to add to that, Maria?
Yeah, I mean, I think trend data is always interesting to us, right? Because you want to know if you made the investment and if the energy savings are holding up. And I think this is not going to be, I mean, this is one of the things that we'll work with you on the initial call, is to figure out, when you have data, what works for you. It's really trying to understand the investments. Did they stick? Did they produce the results you thought they would? And are those results sustainable? That's really why we're looking for the reporting that we're looking for. So, Tom, you want to weigh in?
You're muted, but it sounds like you're in agreement.
All the time. No, you've got it. You've got it. And I will preview one of the things that we are actively working on is just a simple tool in that space to help folks kind of track their progress. And so, I mean, it's an area that everyone is likely going to need a little bit of help on. It's something that we want to be able to work with people on in the long term, but for the short term, Eli and Maria, you nailed it. Case studies, right? Implementation models, results.
The next question here, I'm glad we left time because the participation from our partners has really been great here. I'm glad we have time to answer all of these. Are you interested in facilities that are already using renewable energy, or looking for facilities that are early in their carbon reduction journey? Maria left, hopefully she's coming back. I think the goal of this pilot is to work, the goal throughout Better Buildings and Better Plans is to both showcase leadership and showcase replicable case studies while also providing that level of technical assistance to folks who are learning and are on their way. So we would be happy to work with you on your journey. If you're if you don't have renewable energy already in the ground, that is okay. But I think the goal for this is that the goal for piloting this with a relatively short time frame of 2 years is that you're able to move on, and be able to share replicable strategies and approaches within the first 2 years. So that we have areas that other folks can learn from. If you're a company that thinks, well, I think we're really going to take 2 years to get our arms wrapped around, what we might even do around carbon. I think that that's an important conversation that DOE wants to work with you on, and your TAM would be happy to work with you on. To truly participate in the pilot, I think we're looking for you to, over the course of 2 years, have some sort of, case study, strategy, solutions, development of an approach that we can share with other partners. Does that make sense? And Tom, if there's anything you want to add, or if Maria is able to come back, I'll give a chance for somebody else to participate in this question too.
Yeah, again, right on point. Where I think if Maria were here, maybe she's coming back. It looks like we're looking for replicable pathways that can be demonstrated. And so, as long as that's where your mind is at, if you've done renewable, if you've already implemented renewable, and you're thinking about the next thing and you're actively pursuing it, we want to be able to highlight that and capture that information. That way, again, we can share and help provide that leadership, right? So you can be a leader in that space and be helping others.
Yes, I apologize. I dropped out. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
Okay.
The long torrid DOE computer story. Okay, sorry about that.
Well, Maria, fun one for you next, given your history of, at the genesis of the Energy Star program. What are you going to call this program so it sticks like Energy Star?
Oh, that's a good question. This is like I'll buy a 6-pack of whatever beverage of choice. Somebody can help us think this through. I don't. Right now, it's low to no carbon. I don't know. So see, if you're at the table, you can help us decide on a name. I don't know. I think it really fits nicely, frankly, under better buildings and better plants. I mean, right? Better plants can be defined a lot of different ways. Better for the organizations that run the plants, better for the communities that they're housed, and better for our national community and environment. So who knows? Maybe we just stick with better plants. But in any case, I think that part of why we're piloting this is to see what works. And if we have something here, I think the more I talk to partners and the more we engage with folks, I think that this pilot is seizing on the right opportunity, which is everyone wants to do it. The question is, how do we do it? And where are we getting stuck? And how do we move forward as a country and as a manufacturing sector to get that done? And so we're hoping to learn a lot in the pilot, and maybe what we learn informs sort of what we call it. But we're looking. The short answer is I don't know, but I think we're on to something here, because I think this is really what we need to do next. I know it's not going to be easy. We've had lots of discussions. Maybe some of you have been part of those discussions, but we know if this were easy, it would be worth doing. So we look forward to working with everybody. This is going to be tricky. It's going to be hard. There are barriers. There are things that we don't know how to do yet, but until we get our arms around those and try and figure out what's possible, but also what's not possible now, we're not going to be able to move forward at the pace we want to. So.
The question, will this presentation be made available after the session? Yes, all of this has been recorded. Similarly, and just to if you're a partner trying to think if this is right for you, or if you're at the right place in your decarbonization journey that makes sense to participate, I really would say just have a call with us, set up a call with your TAM and us, and we're happy to get into the specifics of your company and determine whether or not this is right. I recognize that sometimes asking questions in Slido and in front of a group can be intimidating, so we're happy to work with you on that. Maria, we are up to our second company saying, count us in.
I love that. This is like a telethon. No, I'm just kidding. I just dated myself by saying the word telethon. I don't think my college age kids know what that was. Right. Okay. That's awesome.
I guess just because we have a little bit more time, I want to get green energy into our plans moving forward. The question that management always asks is, what is the return on investment? Do you have any information on the current ROI for solar and wind energy? A couple of things that I'll put forward here. I know that in our sector, in the industrial space, we have a number or some resource documents that are in the works being developed or coming down the pike that we hope can tailor towards our sector that can be helpful. Maria, under Maria's leadership, there is a real, forget the dumb. There's a resource portal on the Better Buildings Initiative page that has all sorts of links to really everything you can think of in the renewable energy space. The REOP tool that NREL had developed, I would also encourage you to check out. But getting back to what I said at the previous point, if you have these types of questions, this is a great conversation to have with your TAM, to bring Tom in, to bring us in, and let us roll up our sleeves and work with you on these types of challenges.
Because some of these are going to be location specific questions too, right? So I think that's the challenge with solar or wind. But yeah, so there you go. I was going to take a foray into solar and wind pricing, but we won't do that. So yeah, so that would, I think that'll be specific to probably the facility that you're interested in doing. So.
Maria, do you anticipate assistance in considering the credibility of RECs and offsets?
Well, that's a good question. I know some of our colleagues at other federal agencies have done that. I know there's been work at EPA that's been done on RECs through the Green Power Partnership and offsets. And if that's an issue, we will look towards our federal family to figure out and be consistent with how other feds or other folks are handling that. So that's the way I would answer that. Anything different, Tom or Eli? Okay, great.
Does the from Mr. Wonderful, I guess from
I love
Shark
that name. I love that name.
Does the Financing Navigator offer options for low carbon projects? I think that's a really great question, and a lot of what can be helpful about the Financing Navigator is just understanding all the different complex financing options and different vehicles by which you can finance a lot of your projects. I think that it's worth going back. I personally just want to go back and take a look and see whether or not it does. And this gets to a lot of what we were presenting, that if it doesn't, this type of feedback is the ability for you to, on the ground floor, to say, hey, why doesn't it have that? How can we create that? So I will check, and if it doesn't, we will, that's a great idea for us to move forward.
Well, and if it has a little bit in there, but we have a lot of need to grow that information for partners. So Joe Invic that we work with to oversee the financial, he's quite keen. He's really our lead on the financing space. He's quite keen to work with allies, folks, service providers or product providers or financing providers in this space to figure it out. But that's part of what, we go back to, if this was easy and if it was already done, we wouldn't be here. So I think I love the fact that you raised this question, because it signals for me, another dimension in which we're going to have to think through what it is we're able to offer, what exists and we're able to offer, and point people to through the Better Buildings tools that we have. So.
Well, that's great. And Maria, I purposely saved this question for last. Our partner already knows this is going to be wildly successful and popular, and is starting to challenge you on what we're going to do after we've already exceeded all of our wildest expectations through this pilot. What comes next? What's the thinking beyond the pilot?
Well, to me, if the pilot's successful, we've solved the carbon problem. So I think we got our work cut out for us. But I think, the real goal of the pilot is proof of concept. We want to make sure that we as the Department of Energy are able to help our partners address some of these real needs they have and capture what's working so that we can collectively move forward. So I am very appreciative of the positivity of the comment. We're hoping it's successful. Like I was saying before, I think this is the right thing to be doing now. This is what we need. We all want to get there. And I think it's together, we're going to figure out the different ways to get there. One size isn't going to fit all. I think there are going to be different solutions and different pathways, and the extent to which partners are willing to step up, sort of take action at facilities. And that's going to mean engaging people in these decisions and discussions at your organization that you don't typically engage. So I think this is a big lift. And I think that if we're able to be successful and demonstrate sort of what it takes and how it can be successful, your organizations are going to be successful, but we're going to be successful as a country too. And that's really the goal. And so that's why we're so excited about it, is to see if we can do this and if it's possible, and where we know we can move quickly and where we need to do a little bit more work so that we can get unstuck. So with that, if there's no more questions, like Eli said, lots of, it's often and better, we can be much more specific with you about the needs that you and your company might have, talking through some of this and figuring out if this pilot is right for you, because that's really the question. My guess is a lot of people on the phone are interested and want to do this, and so the question to you really is this a good time? Is this the right thing? We hope it is. Right opportunity for your organization. We'd love to have you join. So you can see my email. You all have Eli's and Tom's as my guess. Please email me if you're interested in joining the pilot. We would love to have you. Email us if you are interested in follow-up calls or any more information. There is information on this pilot on the Better Building Solutions Center. There is a place under other initiatives. If you look down, it'll say low carbon pilot, and it'll link you to a fact sheet if you need to take paper up within your, or send it around electronically in your organization. There's also questions, other questions and answers there. We look forward to hearing from you. We are thrilled that you were able to join us today. We are so excited about this pilot. I'm going to go back to the last comment because I agree too that this pilot is going to be successful and powerful, but that's only with your help and your involvement. So we hope that everyone will join with us and work with us on this. This could be very, very exciting and great for your organizations too. So with that, thank you for joining. We'll look forward to hearing from many of you and talking to many of you soon. Thanks so much.
Bye, folks.